Dude, manufacturing, man, that's today's topic. One of the tragedies, man, one of the fucking tragedies of our lifetime is that manufacturing left the United States. For people that were born in North America, losing manufacturing was one of the biggest, losses of culture ever. Boys will never be the same. The way the boys would have been raised if they would have seen their fathers running factories, working in factories, making things. And what we have now, which is a generation of kids that never saw anybody make anything. They've never been to a factory. Most people don't even know where their food comes from. A lot of people, if you ask them what's glass made out of, they don't even know what glass is made out of, right? They don't even know the most basic things about everything around them. And what this makes you kind of apathetic. It has so many effects on you. It's incredible. And the negative effects. You just don't care about things. You can't picture what happens when things are made, like the environment. And again, I'm not an environmentalist at all, but if I come in your backyard with a fucking truck full of chemicals and I pour it into your fucking, your garden, you're going to be pissed off, right? There's some manufacturing processes are really not good, and other ones are much better. And so if you see a factory, men are caring creatures. If you see a factory and you see how it works and how the people are inside of that factory, you learn so much. So I want to go over, I feel very lucky because I spent 28 years in Asia, which is the manufacturing capital of the world. And a lot of it was in Japan. A lot of it was in China and also in India and Philippines, Thailand, all over the place. So in all these countries, I was very lucky to have gone to a lot of factories, And when I first went to China, when I first got there, I told you guys before, but I went there to join the Tiananmen Square massacre. I wanted to fight with the students. I saw the communism was falling in Europe. I was super excited about it. I went over there. I wanted to be part of, I was really interested in China. I was really interested in Asia. And, I was a kid, but I was interested. I wanted to know what the hell's going on in this world, So I went over there. And I got over there a little bit too late. I got there in the summer of '89. But June was the date. It was before the internet, obviously. So we didn't, back then, you never knew, you kind of never knew what was going on. You thought you did, but you actually didn't. If you look at today's news and what happens, boom, there's an earthquake. It's an 8.2. The epicenter's here. No, it's there. You figure it out quickly, right? There might be a couple of erroneous news reports, but pretty soon you realize it's snowing in Boston. You know what I mean? There's been, something's happening around the world. And so either way, so I got to China, and at the time I went there for the massacre because I believed in freedom, and I still do. And but then that was over and there was nothing going on there. People would, take me in their houses and tell me what happened at the massacre, and I met people who were there and all that. But after that was kind of done, I didn't know what else to do. So I started traveling around China. And this is the 80s. And when I travel, around China, white guy traveling around China in the 80s, everybody thinks at that time, they didn't just think, they were absolutely convinced that every foreigner was super rich and every foreigner wanted to invest in China and manufacture in China. Because especially if you went to a small town, the only reason why foreigners ever went there was to set up a factory, to manage a factory, to buy, raw materials or goods or ready-made products or something, right? There was that was the only reason, was business, was why a foreigner would be in a small town. So because of that, I was really, really fucking lucky. And so what happened was I would get to a small town, and whoever was in charge of, they had at the time they had things called high-tech parks. Actually high-tech parks are a little bit later, but they had the same kind of the beginning, the germination, the beginning of the fact of that idea. And what that is kind of each city had their own, they had a separate area where you could manufacture products, but they weren't sold in China. So it was almost like it was almost like a compound, like a prison or something. Like, you went in there, you made things. There was trucks that went in there, and those trucks would drive on highways that were kind of guarded almost straight to the ports, and they would export them overseas because the goal was just export. It wasn't any kind of internal consumption at all, right? So either way, so those things were run, all the companies that were in those factories, in those high-tech zones, or, manufacturing zones, or I forgot all the names of they had different names over the years, but basically it's areas where you manufacture. Those areas, they were all foreign companies in the beginning. So when I got there, it was all foreign companies. And it was Chinese working at foreign companies, getting paid a salary. And so sociologically what was happening was everybody from the countryside would come to these factories. So when you got to the factory, there was a lot going on. Like if you don't know anything about what happens in a factory, you probably wouldn't even guess what happens. But I'll just give you a quick rundown, although the topic is more about manufacturing and how I think it's very important to learn about as a man, to learn about how things are made. And I think and I'm going to show you, it's very, very profitable also. But I want to also tell you about the trends of how it works, right? So what happens is who goes to work in factories in China? Young people, okay? Young people go to factories. And so they turned Shenzhen, which is a whole, almost like a state, think of it as a U.S. state, huge area, and they turned that into the manufacturing, like the basket, the bread basket of China to make things. And so what would happen is these young people who were very conservative, from conservative families, in very conservative towns where they were like heavily watched, they didn't have a lot of freedom, they would get to these industrial towns, and it was very, very different. The kids were free for the first time from their parents. And they were free from a lot of stuff. I mean, it's almost like if they just took, you at 16 and just, took you from like Alabama to like Silicon Valley or something, like you're just like, what the, you get there and like there's girls everywhere. That's the other thing. Most of the factories, workers are girls because girls have smaller hands and they're better able to paint little eyes on little dolls and put hairs in things. And you need small fingers to be able to manufacture a lot of items. And other items, you need a lot of strength, right? There's different types of manufacturing, but a lot of the manufacturing that China was doing was women. So that's an interesting thing. Guys were also there doing other jobs, but on the lines, the factory lines, a lot of them were women. So when you get to these towns where they're like, especially like Shenzhen, when you went down to Shenzhen, I went down there, it was insane. It was just like the whole state felt like a huge college campus on Easter break. I mean, it was crazy because they had broken out of, they're a very old country, whether it's 4,000 or 5,000 years of history. Some people say 3,000. There's a lot of claims going around, especially in Chinese media. But let's just say this. China is an old country with long traditions. And that has a lot of meaning when you're a young person because you get pretty trapped by these traditions, right? You don't have a lot of freedom, what you can do, right? Very different in America where young people have a lot of freedom. That's why you had traditionally young people loving to go to America where they could break away, they could do what they wanted, they could have freedom, right? Well, that's kind of what these factory towns or these high-tech parks or manufacturing zones were, is the young people were there. And, when I was there in Shenzhen, when it was new, it was just made into a manufacturing state or whatever you call it. And man, there was young people everywhere. It was crazy. I mean, it was crazy. I can't even the energy level was insane. Everybody wanted to get rich. And, it was crazy. It was super fun. I got to tell you that. It was fucking fun. One of my friends had a factory with, it was two factories next to each other with 2,000 girls working in each factory. And this is later on. This is like 94. And so I'm there with him. And he said to me, he said, my manager's ripping us off, so would you mind, managing this factory, these factories for me? and they were making Pokemon stuff, Pokemon dolls, and they were huge. He was one of the first one to make Pokemon dolls. That's my friend. So I had a chance to go down to Shenzhen and manage these girls, but I decided not to. But it was crazy because when I went in there to manage them, the first day when I went in like to check it out and see if I wanted to do it, it was just like 4,000 girls looking at me, and all of them are. I mean, if you like country girls, they were pretty hot. I mean, there was like 4,000 girls away from their boyfriends, their husbands, just like in the middle of nowhere, basically horny with nothing to do except for work and then free time. And they had a lot of free time. They would have at least one day off a week, sometimes two, depending on what was going on. Sometimes they'd have a whole week off or whatever when the factory didn't have anything to do, or when Japan had a holiday. Sometimes they would shut it down. It wasn't a lot of the stories you hear about manufacturing is from people who weren't in China. If you're actually on the floor watching things, it's different. It's different. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse, but it's definitely different. And so I realized I was going to get laid like crazy if I managed this factory. Like it was going to be insane because I'm like the only guy there, right? Pretty much. And plus I'm seen as the rich foreigner managing factory, so I knew they were going to lay down for me. But I decided not to do it because I don't like to take the easy route on anything, and I didn't take it, which I do regret now because that was a great chance to manage a serious enterprise, which I've never managed 4,000 people before. So that was I regret that. I got to say, I regret not moving to Shenzhen in '94. But either way, live and learn. And so, but what I was very lucky is I got a chance to go to factories. So, like I said, I would go to a city, the mayor, whoever was in charge of business development, they would see me coming and they'd be like, "Oh, Mr. Foreigner, would you like to open up a factory in our town? Our town is very good for manufacturing, this and this and this. Please come to dinner with us." And they would take me to dinner. And this happened hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. I don't even know how many times. I would say thousands probably. So I would just get taken to these dinners, and they would show me all the benefits of the taxes in their city, 10, 20 years without paying tax. And, you get this kind of benefit and that kind of benefit. And the bank will lend you this money at this rate. And, it's very easy to get a loan. It was very easy to get a loan. You could literally just walk in 89 when I first got there. You could literally, I'm not kidding, literally anybody listening to this right now, you could walk into a bank in China. First, you'd have to go to the high-tech park and talk to the owner or the manager. And then you'd have to choose, what you're going to manufacture. And basically, you could go with him down to the bank, and they would give you $10 million to do that factory. You could just sign a loan, gone. And the only catch was you often had to give a lot of the money back to the bank manager. So sometimes as much as 50% you had to give back to the bank manager for giving you the loan. So you have to, give him $5 million, you take $5 million, and then you try to make a factory work with $10 million in debt. And believe it or not, it actually wasn't that difficult because there was so much profit in manufacturing in China at the time. You probably could have done it with $1 million. You could have made it profitable with $1 million, I bet. But that was the standard deal in China. There was a lot of corruption, and if you went there, you had to play by the rules. If you didn't, if somebody went there and they said, "Oh, I'm not going to do that. Back in my country, we don't do that." He'd say, "Well, that's nice. Let me get the next foreigner in here. Let's get him in here. Let's get him alone." And the thing is, it kind of worked out in China's favor because that money then had to be invested in these factories, and those factories made goods, which obviously made China very, very wealthy, and also brought in some very needed skills. Because China had just gone through the Cultural Revolution and they had destroyed all the schools and killed a lot of teachers and, killed people wearing glasses. And there was all kinds of craziness and there was people sent to the countryside. It was just a total mess. It was a total mess. So China was coming back from this. And that's partly why the kids were so excited. You probably, if you're German or American or French or whatever, you probably can't even imagine what I'm talking about. The type of energy from young people that want to succeed, who've been fucked over and had a tough time in life. Man, they really fucking want it. They want it. They're going to get it. They're going to do it. They're coming at you. That's China.
And that's partly why they are the way they are. So either way, so I started to see these, I started to go to all these factories, and it was a really great experience because I got to see the different types of floors and how things are made. And like when I look around my house, just look around your house right now. Just look at all the things, the chairs next to you, the materials, the flooring, the computer in front of you, your glasses or whatever, the wire that goes here, whatever, the washing machine, the glass bottles for the wine or whatever you got in your house in front of you. Everything that you're looking at was manufactured by somebody, right? And I think a lot of people just don't really realize that. There's a factory out there making every single thing you've ever used. And when you go to these factories, you start to understand why things are not made that way and they're made this way. And you start to understand life. And as a man, understanding life is the key to prosperity. It's, I think, also the key to happiness. Guys in the old days, I know in Italy, I heard this story, was they would have this big dinner, and the women would cook the dinner and the men would be out working. And then the men would come in to eat dinner. When the dinner was over, the men would go outside and basically open the hood of the car and just stare at the engine and talk about the engine, talk about how it could be improved. Like, that thing should be over there and this should be over here. We can make this bigger. Imagine if this was like this. And the men would, as a way of relaxing after a meal, think about how to make an engine. And the woman who tells the story, she's like, I just realized that men and women are so different, because the women would be in the house talking and laughing, and the men were outside staring at the engine. And her dad was doing that, and she couldn't understand it. But now, as a woman, she understands that men and women are just fundamentally different. We have different things we're interested in. So girls work in factories, but they're not as interested in making things, right? So I started to go to these factories, and I started to see that there's a lot of different kinds of factories, and I want to go over some of them here. I would like to take a group of guys and their sons to China to look at different factories. If you're interested, contact me at Ronin MGTOW, and I'd like to take a small group. It won't be cheap because we're going to be going all over China, and we will be seeing factories. What I want to do is I want to give you the experience that I had, where we get to see how things are actually made. And in China, it's relatively easy, especially for me because I speak Chinese and I've done a lot of business in China. It's easy for me to get access to factories. And I'd love to take you out there and show you some things that I learned about how things are made. Because a lot of this manufacturing now is starting to come back to the United States, because the United States is number one as the most competitive place to produce a product right now. So you're seeing, it changes all the time, but at the very moment, the United States is the most competitive. So you're seeing a lot of, opportunities to take factories back to China, but back from China to the U.S. Or Mexico to the U.S. But young people don't understand what the hell, how things are made. So it's kind of not hopeless, but it's difficult, because to get started, the first thing you need to do is understand how it works. So I'm going to tell you how I look at it. Okay, so I want to, in this podcast, I'm not going to talk about, like, from a vocabulary point of view or something like that. I want to, how do I put this? Basically, I want to show you from a Richard Feynman curiosity point of view. Okay, if you haven't seen Richard Feynman, he's absolutely awesome. If you search Richard Feynman curiosity on YouTube, you can see the documentary where he talks about his insatiable curiosity for how things work. And what I want to do for you, and what I have, is a curiosity in how things are made. How things are made. I'm very interested in how things are made. I really, it doesn't even matter if I make any money off of it at all. I'm very, very interested. Whenever there's a factory and I have the chance to go, I will always go. And I look at the factory from my own perspective. I'll look around like, Okay, where is the stuff coming in? Okay, where is it going out? Okay, let's see. What does it smell like in here? Okay, how crowded are things? How do things move? What kind of people are working here? And what kind of, let's see, what are they wearing? And then I look at the floor, like what's the floor like? Is it sticky? Is it rough? Is it smooth? Is it waterproof? Is it, I look at the factory from almost like an alien's perspective. Like if I was an alien, what would I was trying to figure out the world from the basics without knowing anything, right? So the best way to get started in thinking about manufacturing or understanding manufacturing, how things are made, is to, like I said, have a childlike view. These are the type of factories here. I've been to a few factories like this. This is not the most common type of factory, by the way. This is automotive factory. Automotive factory has a lot more automation. Okay, so you have like, robots, doing things very quickly. I've been to the Tesla factory in Fremont. I took a private tour with the head of supply chain. It was great. Through a friend of mine, introduction. It was a fabulous opportunity. We got to see all the robots, the KUKA robots. Used to be German, now it's Chinese. KUKA robots manufacture a lot of the Tesla cars, and we got to see the Model X being made before it was on the market. So that was pretty cool. That was very cool. So this is a type of factory, but not all factories. This is a very rare type of factory, actually. Automated factories are fucking difficult to set up and very, very expensive. And even Tesla right now is having a lot of problems because I'm not saying that this is true, but this is what people are saying, is they over-relied on automation for every part of the manufacturing process for the Model 3. And a lot of the Japanese think that too much automation doesn't necessarily help competitiveness and productivity. There's a limit. You need men and machine to make a good product, according to the Japanese. And Tesla basically took let's automate the whole goddamn thing. Not obviously totally, but that was their basic mindset. Machines can move faster. Let's make the machines move faster, and let's make more. And just a side note, Elon Musk was watching a machine, a robot, making a car, putting on the glass and lifting the car, moving around. And then he was watching. He had been to another factory where it was a canning machine, making beer or something, and the cans would just like super fast, right? And then he saw the car was quite slow, and he said to the engineer, why is it so slow? And he said, oh, that's just the way we make cars, that's speed. He said, well, can't the machine work faster? He goes, oh, yes, it can work faster. He goes, well, does it get more sloppy if it works faster? He's like, oh, no, it's same. It does basically perfect every time unless it's broken, right? And so his idea was to create the machine within the machine, which is like the perfect manufacturing facility. It still remains to be seen if that's going to happen, but that was his mindset, right? So he had seen a lot of robotics, and he thought, why not faster, like a canning machine? Why not more? Why have people? That's basically was his idea. I love guys like that who think different. Whether it's going to work out or not, it's a good thing for humanity to have pioneers out there testing shit, trying, right? But if you're thinking about manufacturing, one of the reasons why young boys and men don't think about manufacturing is they look at these factories and they look too complex. It's like, man, I could never do that. I don't even understand what the hell's going on here, And so you lose interest anytime something's too complex. You lose interest as a human. It's like oh, it's too much. I can't do it. So let's look at some other type of factories, because there's many types of factories out there. Okay, so here's a clothing factory. Now this type of factory is quite common in China. Okay, so basically what you got is a bunch of sewing machines, and you got a bunch of girls. Now this is more like the factory that I was looking at in Shenzhen in '94. There was a bunch of girls, but they were painting dolls. They were painting Pokemon dolls in big lines on big long tables. So my idea before I went to the factory was that manufacturing was too complex for me. I could never understand it. I'm not smart enough, There's no way I'm going to understand this. I'm not in this business. But when I got there, I realized, wait a second, this is like super simple. Like this is the same as I can understand this. Like my mom used to make clothes, we were poor. My mom made a lot of my clothes as a kid. So like, I saw her make clothes. She had her sewing machine and pretty simple, right? And all you got to do is get a lot of sewing machines, right? That's manufacturing. That's one type of manufacturing. And that's the thing, as I say to you guys, is that you can understand this stuff. This stuff is easy to understand. But when you see it, when you see this at scale and you see the clothes lining up in one side, you see the trucks coming in, you see people, having problems, slipping on the floor or whatever, complaining about this, you start to see manufacturing from not just a single person's perspective, but from a process. You start to create processes. Like if you look at the line here, there's an arrow in there, right? This direction, go here. The yellow line means something, right? Everything has meaning. It's all been standardized, right? And a lot of people, when you listen to, I think a lot of reason why kids don't understand manufacturing is two reasons. One of them is that people think making things is below them, which is completely crazy. It's so crazy. Making things is fucking awesome. I mean, it is the coolest thing. Every boy gets excited about his train and putting it together and seeing how things operate, tearing things apart, trying to figure out how it works. This is stuff that we're just naturally interested in. It's not like, and it's just some kind of pride why people wouldn't want to be interested in looking at stuff like this. But the other reason is that they so one is that they feel like it's kind of below them, right? And then I think the other one is that they think it's kind of like too complex. It's like it's too big. Like I can't, General Motors, right? These are huge. What can I do, right? I'm telling you right now, if you understand how things are made and you're up to date on what different types of processes are involved, and you see a product that you want, understanding the manufacturing of that product not only enhances your life a lot because you understand life better, you understand things around you better, you understand why things are the way they are and why they're not another way, but also it gives you opportunity to produce your own products. It's very easy to set up a factory. You can look at a factory like this. It's not difficult. It's like it's one of these things that people are very easy. They invest in factories easily because it's a money machine, right? You buy the clothing. A lot of clothing in China, like that cost you $275, it costs like $5-7 in China. Okay, if you find the right fabric market. So something like some diesel jeans, you can buy diesel jeans that are from the factory for like $20, no problem. Like at a shop that sells, things that they made, like say the factory. Just give me an idea. Here's another kind of tidbit. Let's say it's a diesel factory, right? And the diesel factory is in a city where they only allow 2 shifts. So there's like morning and there's the swing shift, right? Day and morning swing. It's illegal to make at nighttime. But what the manager of the factory will do is he will bribe the local whoever, and then he will do an extra shift and make diesel jeans, and then he will sell those to the other small shops in China. So a lot of the supposed knockoff goods are actually original. They're actually from the factory, and they're very high quality. But they cost like $20, and that gives plenty of profit for the guy because it's so cheap to buy the material. It's such a joke, you guys. Once you understand manufacturing, you stop being an idiot too. I mean, just who can pay $50 for a T-shirt? You got to be a fucking idiot. Like, it's like the thing costs like $2 to make. Like literally, it almost doesn't matter what material it is. It costs like a maximum of $4. You become less of a fool when you understand manufacturing. Oh yeah, here's another reason to understand it. Manufacturing. Okay, this is a story here. My friend in Shanghai. So my friend opened a shop, and his shop was like a dollar shop. Okay, like in the States, you have these dollar shops where they have plastic things. Okay, so in China, for some reason, plastic stuff was more expensive. So he's German. So he said, look, I'm going to open up a dollar shop, basically. I think it was 10 renminbi, it was a little more than $1, but he was going to open up his shop, and he was going to, make a lot of money. Well, he actually was a pretty smart guy. He's a really smart guy. And he knew that his customer well. So he spoke Chinese. He's a good friend of mine. And he opened up little dollar stores in Shanghai next to bus stops where a lot of regular people would take the bus to work. So that he got a lot of traffic. Well, he had a lot of traffic, sold a lot of stuff. He went bankrupt. Why? The reason why he went bankrupt is because China is the only country in the world that people understand the price of goods. Okay, so for example, if you have a dollar store in the United States, Americans do not know if the plastic cup costs closer to $1 or if the little stand costs more, close to $1, or the basket costs close to $1. We don't know what the real price of these things is because we never worked in a plastic factory, and we never owned one, and they were never in our neighborhoods, right? We understand things in our neighborhoods, right? Like in my neighborhood back when I grew up, surfboard manufacturers. I understood how to buy a blank, how to shape, where to get fiberglass, how to do the process, the whole thing I understood, right? But because it was in my neighborhood. Well, same thing with Chinese. They grew up with a factory nearby. So my friend's company went bankrupt because what the Chinese would do is they would go to his store and they would buy so a little more background. In these dollar stores, some things in the dollar store cost like $10. Other things cost like 10 cents. So the store, what they do is they play on that. And so they have a lot of, thousands or tens of thousands of goods. And then you as a consumer don't know which one's really worth what. So you just buy what you need, right? But the Chinese are different. They knew the price of everything. So they knew that he was selling some $10 goods for $1, plastic goods. And so they bought those. So they just go in and just clean out everything that he had that was over $1 that he was selling for basically, let's just say $1. It wasn't, it was a little more, but let's just say it was $1. So let's say there was a $3, $5, $10 thing in there. They just bought everything that was over $1 and then they resold it to their friends, right? So he went bankrupt. So the reason why is because they understood manufacturing. The Chinese have been manufacturing for 30, 40 years and they understand so much about it, right? And it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to know that. And another interesting story in China was I knew a guy who had a factory and he was kind of a stubborn guy, to be honest, but he was going to manufacture a product. And so he went to the factory and he, got it all set up to pay everybody. And then he said, okay, let's make, this product. They had kind of a training morning, okay, here's our new product, blah, blah. And, okay, we're going to make so many per day. And then everybody goes back to their stations. And then nobody was working. And so the guy that I knew, he was like, why is nobody making anything? And then his manager didn't want to say, he's kind of shy. And then he said, come on, like, why? And so they talked, come back to him. And they said, well, the reason why they're not working is because they don't think that product's going to sell in America. They don't think that Americans will buy this product. And what it was is the lowest level people working in the factory knew more about Chinese consumers than this stupid foreigner with money. They knew that if they made that shitty product that nobody wanted, it was going to be a very depressing thing and they were going to lose their jobs because nobody was going to buy it. And then they're going to get fired again. So they're used to getting hired and fired and hired and fired all the time, right? So they've gotten quite smart. So think about the level of knowledge that comes down into Chinese factories. It's incredible. It's so important for the country. So let's talk about types of things and, like this thing here. It's not complicated, right? Sewing machines. You got girls with yellow hats on. I don't know what that's for. Probably some kind of safety thing. Everything in a factory has a purpose. Everything has a purpose. There's a reason for every millimeter in this factory. Once you get down to it, factories are so well planned. It's amazing. Okay, let's look at the different. This is a factory that makes furniture. So you're going to see a very different type of factory here, right? You're going to see like here, this is more like wood class, right? You got guys, it's an assembly line, right? The thing is on that little conveyor belt, probably manual, and it comes along, and everybody does one aspect of the manufacturing process. So if you want to manufacture furniture, what you need to do is you need to break it down into parts that make sense, and you have to have stations, and then you need to have some kind of a way to move the product. If it's a very basic factory, you just push it. If it's the more automated you get, obviously it can have some kind of a conveyor belt. But I don't want you to think that you need that, or that there's any loss of face in anything. A factory is what you think it is. I've been to so many factories, I've seen so many types, and my friend with the Pokemon dolls, inside his factory, to me looked like shop class or looked like art class or something, arts and crafts. And that guy became a gazillionaire making these dolls. So you don't need high tech to make a lot of money. That's the other thing. You can have very low tech and you can bank cash if you have a good idea. And if you set the manufacturing process up right, and if you get the right manager, your manager is absolutely essential. The right manager, and obviously the right tax breaks, where you set it up. And I say the same thing if you're setting up in America, right? So this kind of factory is kind of nice because it's simple. There's not a lot of health hazards besides heavy things falling on people cutting their fingers. And then there's also the breathing issue. So you have to have ventilation, either windows or you have to some kind of vents. But pretty simple, right? Pretty easy to understand. Pretty damn easy. Now here's a food manufacturer. Here's a large food production where they're going to have a cow on one end, basically, and they're going to have cutting him up and putting him in pieces and getting him all boxed up and frozen or whatever. Sometimes they have flash freezing facilities to put, and then some kind of a what's it called, like a Ziploc or something. So this is this type of factory. The environmentalists or everybody will say, this is so evil. And I personally don't like meat, as anybody knows. I do eat meat still, but I don't like killing animals. But in the end, we're eating animals right now. So this is the way it is. I eat animals. So you got to buy animals from somewhere. Someone's got to make them. And these type of facilities are clean and they're safe. And so they make, and they're scalable, right? So they can make a lot of production. So if you eat meat, there ain't nothing wrong with this here. Okay, now here is electronic. This is what I was trying to do, an electronic example. So this is a pretty tough job. This, making iPhones and stuff like this, man, it's pretty tough. Again, it's mostly girls working here, and they work hard. You see them, you see them sleeping. It's quite funny to be around a factory, a Chinese factory. It's the people have a pretty good sense of humor, actually. It can be enjoyable. I speak Chinese, so it's easier for me to relate or talk to everybody. But it's interesting. But here's a simple one. Now look at this. Look how simple this is. It's electronics, but it's just like simply clicking things together, putting things together. No big deal. No big deal. Not complex. Let's see here. Let's look at what other type here. What is this one here? Okay, so here's more electronics. Now some of these they require clean rooms, and the girls have masks on to make these. But this type of thing is not complex. Here we are back. Sorry, there's that clothing, and I'm back at clothing. Clothing manufacturing is probably the biggest type of manufacturing in the world. The clothing manufacturing is freaking everywhere. You see people making clothes. Okay, now here's a more heavy factory. This is obviously producing motorcycles or scooters, and this is going to be more guys, right? You'll see it's less delicate and it's more heavy, and so you're going to see you're using high pressure air guns and things like that. Guys tend to do the more dangerous jobs in factories. And girls tend to do the more meticulous jobs better. So you'll see that that pays off. If you run a factory, you would be wise to look at the wisdom of the ages and hire accordingly, instead of trying to break the mold. Like instead of hiring a bunch of girls to move heavy things, you're probably smarter to hire a bunch of guys. Here's some guys working on some kind of, I don't know what this is here. Yeah, this is the kind of shit that things can go wrong in these kind of factories. I worked in a sawmill in Sweden on this one machine, and I remember the guy told me, he said, the guy before you lost all his fingers in his right hand on this machine here, so be careful, you know. And I was like, oh, okay. I said, what did he do wrong? And they're like, oh, you know, he held on to the wood too long. He didn't let go in this slide thing here. I was like, oh, okay. So he's like, don't do that. I was like, oh, okay. I had no problems. But let's see here. So you can see here, like I say, it's mostly girls. These are making tablets. And they have a lot of freedom. You can see the girl's got headphones on. She's listening to music or something. It's very different than people will have you think that it's total slave labor. And it's not slave labor. And in fact, a lot of smart people are starting to take manufacturing back to the United States because it's very coveted. Because not only does it give, train the populace in valuable skills, young people learn how to make things. It produces revenue and exports, and there's so many benefits. There's so many benefits from manufacturing. It's just amazing. It really is. And then, because the thing is what you can do is you can start out understanding manufacturing, and then you can move into managing a factory, and then you can move into owning your own company and making a shit ton of things. Because this is the kind of shit that you get rich from. When you got a lot of people like this working for you for a low price, and you're making a product that is hot, right? You can make a lot of fucking bread. Going to factories and seeing how things operate is a much better use of your time than studying French history, I'll tell you that. Getting in there and seeing what they do, what machines are necessary, what tax breaks does the government give you, how many people can you get in one factory, what are the limitations, right? What's the profit margin? How do you, sell, right? Because it's all about sales, right? You can manufacture all you want, but if you don't sell, you're kind of fucked, right? So let's see here. Let's go to other type of factories. This is a chemical factory. This one's in the United States, but kind of a good idea. Obviously, there's very good ventilation. It's very clean. Chemical factories are very dangerous. A lot of explosions in chemical factories. So you'll see when I searched chemical factory here, let's see, was this chemical? Let me search chemical factory, China. Okay, now you're going to see a lot of explosions, fires, and things like that, because chemical factories are very, 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 very different thing. Something like manufacturing clothes, anybody can do that. Manufacturing buttons, anybody can do that. Manufacturing furniture, this doesn't require advanced knowledge. Now, if you're going to manufacture chemicals, I don't think it's a good idea to start a chemical factory. Personally, unless that's your specialty, right? It's just hazardous and dangerous, and it's just not a good business. You can see the successes here. There's a nice chemical factory for you there. Probably that's not a very good investment, that one there. Let's see, here's a glass factory. Yep, they're making glass. Let's see if we can, here you can see the glass being heated. Made into bottles. Let's see. Have you ever seen someone blow glass? That's pretty cool. Disneyland used to have that. I don't know if they still have it. In the, what is it called? The castle. There's a castle there, and I don't know what it's called. Snow White's castle or something. Either way, in the first floor, there used to be a glass blowing guy. And he had a glass tube, and he would blow up a bowl for you or something. And then you could buy it after he made it. I always thought that was, when I was a kid, that was my favorite part of Disneyland, actually, was watching that guy make stuff. I always thought that was cool. So here's some people making glass beads. Okay, I don't know what they're doing here. They're probably, they're actually cleaning them up there. You see that fire in the one. Like I said, there's just a ton of hot girls in the factories, man, and they're always very poor and very upwardly mobile. So. It's interesting being around factories. Let's see here. So here's some more glass factories. Oh, here's a different type of glass factory. Okay, they're here. Acid etched glass. I don't know what that means. Insulated. Okay. So there's so many different types of glass. But just walking around a factory like this gives you so many ideas. It does, man. It fucking gives you, as a man, I get excited, Here's a new type of factory. This is a 3D printing factory. Now, this is more like, the girls working with the sewing machines. You have 3D printers, which are basically very easy to understand. I remember when the first 3D printer came to China, there was a company making 3D printers. At first, they were making in America, the first 3D printers. And then they started making in China, and I went straight out there to see it. I took the train, I don't know how long it was, 9 hours, middle of nowhere, out near Yiwu. And I got to see, it was a very basic one making plastic models, but I like to go to factories. I like to see new technology. And it's mainly, I think of it as a hobby. I think it's the best fucking hobby is understanding the world around me. But it also gives me ideas for making money too. And it also makes me, I think, a more interesting person who can talk about more different things, and just understanding things. I think it takes away that kind of hopelessness and helplessness that a lot of people have. They just feel overwhelmed by society. They don't understand how anything's made. They don't understand anything in the world. It's very depressing, actually. But here's the 3D printing. This is something that anybody could set up. I guess this is more similar to Bitcoin mining or something. You got all these machines. You basically will have a technician coming around, looking at the machines, making sure they're okay. Let's see, where's another one here? Let's see, here's an automated one. Wow, here's totally automated. Cool. I guess that robot picks the thing up and moves it over here or something, and it slides down into the thing. Wow, okay. So when you see the more newer factories, it's good because you can I think it's good to see both kind of factories, actually. The very, very old factories, like smelting factories where I've been to factories where there's pots of burning hot iron pouring into something else. I love shit like that because it gives me so many ideas about how to make stuff and how things are made. And it's just a basic fucking thing, heating up metal to liquid. That's fucking cool just right there. You know what I mean? That's fucking badass right there. Somebody wanted me to sell their smelting factory. That's why I went to one in China. They had a smelting factory in Shanghai. And it was a family-owned thing that they had for decades, and they wanted to sell it, so they asked me to come out. But it was great. It was impossible to sell because Shanghai was phasing these things out. They're too dirty for Shanghai. But it was still, for me, it was fascinating to go there and to see the whole thing. So if you get a chance to go to a factory, any factory, I recommend trade shows, factories. If you want to come on the trip to China, if there's enough people interested, I want to take a group of 10 guys and maybe your sons, if you have sons that are interested in manufacturing and seeing how things are made. I'd love to take a group of 10 and then we go to different factories and we meet different manufacturers and we see, obviously we can buy if you want to buy things, but I think the main goal is just to kind of see how things are made. One of the most interesting things I ever saw in my life was this thing. Let me go, let's see. Electric motorcycle factory, China. Let's see if I can find, let's see here. Okay, so I went to this electric scooter factory in China. And at the time, the Chinese, this is basically what a Chinese electric motorcycle looked like at the time. And what was really interesting for me, and I think you might find it interesting too, was the Japanese, the way that they made a product, a motorcycle, was they would obviously, previously it was human, but then now it's computer design. Then they would send the design out to various parts manufacturers. They would get quotes to make, the custom parts. And then they would make, the model GZR, whatever, GSX. And that's how they made a motorcycle. The Chinese couldn't do that. They didn't have the money. So they chose a very different model. And I was trying to get a picture of the factory if I can find one. There probably isn't a picture of the factory. I tell you what was super, super, super interesting was the factory that I went to was all the parts that you look at here, they were standard. So even though it was a motorcycle company, all they would do is order parts off a shelf. So they had boxes of parts stacked up on one side of the factory, and then they had these like tables, like really, simple tables, no automated anything, and then just boxes of parts, and then you would just click them together. So all the work, we were buying a bunch of motorcycles, electric scooters to send to Texas, and we got to watch them make them, and it was almost like Legos. It was like all the parts were standard, and you would just plug them in together, everything, and then they'd put them together, and then they'd have a scooter like in like an hour. You'd take all these parts and it would become a scooter. And it was interesting because the guy said to me that owned the factory, he said, the Japanese custom make everything. And we, because we're poor, we have to, just use these standardized parts. But he said what's happening is that the standardized parts are getting so good and we're able to manufacture so fast. He said there's going to be a day when our style of manufacturing electric bikes is going to surpass the Japanese one. And for most bikes, not for the top end. And I never believed him, but I never forgot it either. And I always wonder today if that ended up happening, if the Chinese electronic bikes way of looking at it ended up being superior to the. Here's a factory. Okay, here's one. Guys putting it together, right? If the Chinese model for electronic bike manufacture was superior to the Japanese one or not, or the American, the Western model. I think the guy ended up being wrong, but it was very, very interesting. It's kind of like the same as the debate that Google was going to make a modular cell phone so you could change out the CPU and click it together instead of custom-made phone. And someone else now is making a modular cell phone. I can't remember which company it is, but it's like one of these dreams that never dies, because if they can make it a better thing for customers, people will buy it, because it's so easy to change the battery. It's so easy to change the CPU. It's so easy to update it, right? Without updating the whole thing. If you want a better screen, you get a better screen. You want a bigger battery, you can get a bigger battery. You want, if you don't mind having a bump on the back, right? You want to have a better CPU, faster CPU, switch that, right? So it was like modular can be better than custom made in some cases, and it's kind of a dream for people that really love automation. And in one movie you might want to watch if you haven't seen it, it's called The Founder, and it's about McDonald's. And a lot of it is about the political battle of the brothers and the McDonald's. Ronald, or not, whatever his name was, Roy Kroc, the battle they had. But what I thought was interesting also, but the way that the brothers took manufacturing to the next level, manufacturing of food, I thought that was super interesting. Here's one of the reasons why manufacturing is a good thing to understand. Here we are as United Nations data. It's 1970, 2009, so obviously China's much higher now than it was then. But you can see the Chinese graph here. Line is straight up, right? So when manufacturing goes up, people get rich. That's it. Point blank. It always happens every country. Maybe not on a per factory basis, but on a per capita of an economy, it just goes up. So whenever you see one going down, like Japan, that's always a very bad sign. Germany, down. Japan, down. UK, down. USA, down, but now USA is coming back. So it's interesting. And also, Germany Europe is coming back a little bit. Starting to happen. China's getting expensive. Things are changing. But overall, manufacturing is an important part of the economy. And as a man, I want to know how things are made, man. I want to know. I think it's fucking interesting as fuck. Really. And not only do I want to know how they're made on an individual basis, I want to understand, like, how does the process work? And then if you want to get even deeper, you can get into supply chain. And supply chain is like fascinating because you have all these trucks and some of them are air conditioned, some of them are not. And I had the great pleasure and opportunity to sell flexi tanks. Flexi tanks are very fucking cool. I thought they were fucking cool. Basically, imagine a large bag, okay, a huge bag. It's either 20 foot long or 40 foot long, and the bag fits into a train car, okay? So you have this dry train car that can only hold like, whatever boxes or bricks or something. You put this plastic bag in here that only costs like $560, cheaper if you get a Chinese one. And then you can fill it up with liquid, with wine or, orange juice or whatever. And then you can ship that to another country. It's a one-time use bag. So one of my friends has a number of patents on the Flexi Tank, the design of the Flexi Tank. And so he's one of the first person to make Flexi Tanks. And so he's a good buddy of mine. I was trying to get him on the podcast, but I wasn't able to schedule it. So unfortunately, I'd love to have him on. His name is Charles. I'd love to have him on a future podcast because he knows everything and he's like amazing. He's like a mentor to me in manufacturing. If you're interested in more, let me know and I can try to get Charles on another future episode. But he asked me, okay, now here I am. I'm doing a totally different business, right? I'm not a manufacturing guy, but I speak Chinese. And we became friends in Shanghai. And he realized that I really speak Chinese. Like I can speak pretty fluent. I can do most of my life in Chinese, right? No problem. Not perfectly, but I'm very comfortable. So he said, okay, look, I want you to come with me. And we want to go to the factory, fix a few problems. And we also want to go to some clients and I want you to sell. So I said, sell flexi tanks. He said, don't worry, I'll teach you. So we had all these flexi tanks in my office and I went to see them being made and I saw them. I had to install them myself. And then you get this little, you get this cool fucking gun. It's got a little laser thing, invisible, that you can point the little thing at it. You could point at something like 500 feet away or whatever, and it will tell you the exact temperature of that exact spot that you're pointing at. And so you could point it at boiling water, you could point it at an ice cube or whatever, and it would tell you exactly the temperature of that thing. And so he gave me this gun, and then my job was to install the bag without anything that would poke it. You have to clean out the thing and everything. And then you have to use this gun, and you have to keep going up and down as the liquid is transferring to the large bag. It heats up, and it becomes so hot that it will melt and it explode. The bag will explode. So the job is to keep the temperature low enough that it doesn't explode, but high enough that you don't waste a lot of time. So you just have to keep it just right. And so I had this gun, and I'm out of this chemical factory, and I'm, doing it, making sure it gets in there as fast as possible. I forgot what the chemical was. I forgot what we were doing, but we did one particular chemical. I forgot what it was, but either way, it was pretty poisonous, hazardous. And so relatively, for a flexi tank, it was. It wasn't orange juice. Yeah. So, we did another one that was cool with oil. Oil heats up a lot. That was cool. Yeah, that was amazing. That was so fucking fun, man. That was one of my funnest days in China. Was out there with these bags and these Chinese guys and filling these fucking huge trucks and the train cars and the fucking gun and screwing around and joking around in Mandarin and in the middle of nowhere and these huge pipes going everywhere. It was fucking awesome. It was a really fun day. But either way, so Charles asked me, he said, hey, so come out to the countryside and let's do some sales. So we went out there, and I tell you this story because I want you to have more confidence in your skills. You can do anything. Don't fucking the world's a fucking joke, okay? It's all very simple. Don't think that everything's so fucking complex and difficult. Fuck that thinking. You can do whatever you want. Just get the fuck out there and do it, okay? So Charles asked me to go, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do it. So we went out to the countryside, and we went to this chemical factory. And so I get there, and so I'm thinking my mind is telling me all these things, you can't do this. They won't buy from a foreigner. Your Chinese isn't good enough. You don't know shit about chemicals, which is true. You don't know anything about their company. You don't know enough. You don't know enough about the bag. You don't know about, this and that. I was like, so my mind's going crazy. So I go out there, and so I get to the factory, and it was all guys because it's a chemical factory, right? But there was one girl, and guess who it was? It was the export department, which she was the one who buys flexi tanks. So I go into her office, and she was like, whoa, like a foreigner in the middle of nowhere. Like, whoa. And who speaks Chinese? So we started talking, and she was like, we buy these bags. And I said, well, these are American bags. They're better quality. And they were better quality, much better quality. And they had much less chance of leaking. And a leaky flexi tank is a nightmare because you need to call the hazmat team in. You can have fires. You can have to stop a whole train or whatever. It can be a total nightmare. So bags, a few $100s for a bag is not a big deal. The key thing is you don't want any accidents, right? So I told her my spiel about the bags, and she's like, oh, okay. And so then we got to lunchtime, and she said, I said, is there a place to eat around here? And she said, not around here, but in town. And so I said, okay, well, let's go. And let's call a taxi. She said, oh, no, taxis won't come out here. It's too far. And so she said, I'll take you. Wait here. So she went down and she got her electric scooter. So here I am on the back of this girl's electric scooter, driving through the countryside in China. I'm holding onto her waist, and she was like super happy, right? She was super happy. She had this foreigner on the back. We're driving through the countryside. It was a fun day. It was just a fucking fun day. She was having a good time. I was having a good time. And we got out there, and I realized that she liked me, and I liked her. And nothing happened, but it was just enough of a spark that she ordered like 1 million bags from our company. And we did quite well on that sale. And it was like, I realized, like, holy shit, like, don't think you can't do something. You never know, right? You never know what the situation is going to be like. I could have never pictured when I got out there, it was going to be an easy sale. It was actually an easy sale for me. It wasn't difficult at all. It was one day done. And plus, we went out and had a killer meal, too. I can't remember who paid. I might have paid, but I can't. Maybe she paid, her company paid. I can't remember. Actually, her company probably paid, actually, come to think of it. And so that's it, So guys, like, understanding manufacturing will make your life, how things are made. It's better for you. You'll make better choices when you buy things. You have a lot of more opportunities. You understand. It'll start to pique your curiosity about things like supply chain. Like, how does this thing get from over there to over here? You know what I mean? Like, how does steel get from Gansu, China, out in the west, to New York City? How does that fucking happen? Very interesting how that happens, actually. Because you can't do it in the airplane, obviously, right? And what would stop it from coming is also quite interesting. How far and how heavy it needs to be, or how much cooling it needs or doesn't need, how much extra precaution it needs. And there's all these, when you talk about logistics, it's very interesting. The factors that are involved. One thing I'll say last is there's a big project in China called OBOR, One Belt, One Road, and they built already trains that go from Beijing to, I believe, to Spain, but basically to Europe. And I think there's 2 of them. They basically revived the old Silk Road with these. And so you can take a manufactured good now from the western region of China, put it on a train, and just send it over to Europe. But one of the problems is as it goes across Siberia, it gets quite cold, and you need a lot of extra packing. And so there's this trade-off. It's actually not a good deal for most products, almost no products. But it's still interesting, like how much it costs, how long it takes, as opposed to airlifting it, or the best way to ship things or move things is shipping. And shipping is another thing. I spent a lot of time on ships and going to ships and loading ships and seeing ships being loaded and working with products, buying off ships and things like that. And this shit is fucking cool, man. You're at the dock. Of course, everything smells like diesel, but it's like amazing. It's such a manly place to be in a fucking dock, man. Big fucking metal doors. Bam! Ships backing in, like shaking the whole thing, and cranes moving big shit around, and just like the no nonsense attitude in a fucking port is amazing. If you ever get a chance to go to a port in China, your mind will be boggled. Absolutely best field trip ever is to go to a fucking port. Ports are cool, man. They are fucking cool. I've been to ports all over the world. China, Japan, India. Like I said, all over India. And India is quite interesting too. Their manufacturing and their supply chain is not nearly as good as China, but it's more, let's say, creative. They have to do more creative things to get it something from A to B. And that's also very, very interesting. So stop, don't, if your mind is like, too programmed by the media and like the mindset of like, manufacturing is not interesting, or like if you go to India, you have to go to temples, or if you go to China, you have to go to, like the Great Wall. You can go do all that shit. But I tell you something, the most interesting thing is to meet the business people and to go to the industrial areas. That's the most fucking interesting thing. I tell you right now, for me, that's way by far. The tourist stuff, it's only half-assed interesting. I'll do it if I go to a new country. Even if I have no plan to do any business at all, I will immediately go to the industrial areas and talk to the people that manage the big industrial companies and warehouses and factories. I did the same thing in the Philippines, and I went to the call centers in Cebu, and we got to bid on making a call center. We got to meet the people working in the call centers with their little, they got their headsets on, and they got their 24-hour camera. And I got to talk to the government official who's in charge of, they at the time was like to coax call centers from India to the Philippines. And that was very interesting. And he was a very, very great contact too. People that are in manufacturing, the top level manufacturing people, tend to be very intelligent, very interesting, very practical, and very good natured. That's my experience. And I've met a lot of them. And that's just been my experience. So, I don't know if it's because the business is like not a political business. It's a different kind of business, I know when I worked in a sawmill in Sweden, it was the one business I worked in where there was no politics at all. It was just men working, men taking a break. And I fucking loved it. It was my favorite job ever. I've done so many like different high-tech jobs. And I've talked about raising money in Silicon Valley, working at internet companies, starting companies, working my own companies. I had a manufacturing company in China for a while, making toys. I've done all kinds of different things, making pills, making supplements. I've done a lot of things, but I got to tell you, my favorite job of all, I swear to God, was working in the sawmill in Sweden. I was chewing tobacco. I was working with the boys, fucking lifting up fucking heavy pieces of lumber, going through the paint room. It's fucking awesome, man. I loved it. Sticking wood into these big machines, cutting down. They were cutting down trees, sawing them up, sawdust flying everywhere. I thought it was fucking great. I was 23 or something. I was really young. And I was making money to go around the world. But either way, so you might be surprised what's interesting and what's not interesting. And now that college degrees are getting more and more useless, as a man, you want to start thinking like, what can I do? What could my son do? That makes a lot more sense. Or my daughter. What is the future for people? Like where should they work? What should they do? Right? If you're a smart dad or you're a smart friend or a smart uncle, you will be able to transfer value to the younger people around you. And I tell you, that's another enormous source of satisfaction, to be able to transfer, to be able to help other people. It's fucking coolest thing ever, man. The smarter you get, the more you know, the more you can help other people. And that is one of the coolest things you will ever be. That's one of the greatest honors. All right, guys. Well, that's about it for today. And that's manufacturing. And I just purposely didn't use any complicated jargon. I just want you to get interested in things, and realize that you can do it. And you don't need jargon. You don't need, like sometimes it's as simple as like, what happens over there? And they'll say, well, blah, 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 complicated. They say, wait, no. That liquid shit over there. Okay, well, what does that do? You put it over there? You put it in those round things? Yeah, we put it in the round thing as well. And you're like, no, just give me the basics. Like, okay, you put the liquid in the round thing, which goes on the belt, which lands in here, which gets smashed up flat into that, and then it gets drilled over there, and then it gets stuck over there, and then it goes over there, and then when it finally leaves here, it gets stuck on this type of truck or this type of boat, and it costs this much money to go to which country, and then where is it used on the other side? Who buys it? Why do they buy it? What do they use it for? And where does it end up? This is amazingly interesting. Amazing. It's just like, it's so cool, man. It's so fucking cool. And you can make a lot of money too. Because I looked online for like the joys of manufacturing or something like that. Like there isn't any videos. There's no more. I want to transfer my enthusiasm to you about this whole thing, about learning how things are made and making things. And now that manufacturing is coming back to America, I read today that Iowa has a surplus. I don't have the link here, sorry. But if you search Wall Street Journal, Iowa has a surplus of manufacturing jobs right now. And they're giving out free training. And it's good paying too. Straight out of high school, guys are making like good money, like $30 an hour. You can do very well in manufacturing, either as an employee, and also the other way to look at it, my way is kind of like the travel around, look at factories, see how things are made, stand in big ports and trucks and drive around with truck drivers and deliver deliveries and figure how the whole thing works. The other way you can do it, which is more common, is to go to a trade school and actually learn how to do one small aspect of a high paying, reliable job to get a job. Now, I always take it from the other perspective. From I want to be Elon Musk, and then if I can't be Elon Musk, what's below that? You know what I mean? And if I can't do that, what's below it? Shoot for the stars and try to understand the whole thing. Elon Musk gets a lot of shit. He's a man. He's doing some very cool things in manufacturing, which is a very complex thing that everybody said he couldn't do. And that's kind of like how the society always is going to be. They're always going to say you can't do it. They're always going to say you don't understand it. Who are you to start a factory? Who are you to do this? Who are you not to go to college? You're ruining your son's future, It's like these fucking moral badgers, They don't know shit, and then they don't even have a job and work at Starbucks when they finish college. Their kids, It's madness. It's madness, guys. Use your brain. Use your brain. You're a madman. You come from good stock, and you got a good future. You're listening to the right stuff. Get out there, do stuff, figure it out. You can do it. Make shit. Steve Jobs was another similar guy who made shit. In the end, they didn't produce it. The other companies made it for them, but they made it. They designed it. They made a product that you're using. I'm using right now, a Steve Jobs product. So get out there, whatever part you get into, or whether it's just a hobby of yours, it's one of the greatest hobbies ever. So fucking fun. At least for me it is. For me it's kind of like when I was a kid and I was in shop class, and I had Mr. Mohan, my teacher Mr. Mohan was my favorite teacher growing up, and we would just cut wood and sand things, and I bought a table saw and a jigsaw and a fucking drill press, and it was like I was fascinated, captivated, I was like a juvenile delinquent, but this class made me shine. It made me excited. I was the one class I never missed. And I heard that they closed shop class in the school I went to. I cannot believe that. I don't understand what the fuck is wrong with society. It is completely fucked. Shop class was my favorite class in school, of all classes, by far. It was fucking awesome. And when you talk about manufacturing, all it is like shop class, but it's plus all the other classes, because you have to use mathematics, and you have to use marketing, and you have to use physics and all the aspects to make things, right? It's an awesome, awesome, awesome hobby, and it can be a great career. And also you can be very wealthy also by being a manufacturer. And a lot of my friends have. So, all right, guys, thanks for listening, and subscribe if you're interested in taking a tour. I'm only going to do it if there's like 10 guys who are willing to pay some pretty serious money, because we're going to have to travel all around China, and I would get access to the factories for you guys, and we would go around and we would have a good time. Maybe we might end up in some, all kinds of places in China and see a lot of cool shit on the side too, right? Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with seeing a few things. And that's the way I try and plan my trips. 2 birds with 1 stone. Don't be a fucking consumer. You go on a trip, learn shit, meet business people, see opportunities, meet bank managers, mayors of cities, the owners of companies, export divisions. And when you're done with that and you have all your brochures, you learned a ton, then go out and have fun. Do both those things, and your trips will be 10 times funner. You will learn 10 times more and you'll make money. Because eventually you're going to have a good opportunity. Trust me. You meet these guys, you're 1 in a million. Or maybe even 1 in 10 million. You know, you're not just a stupid tourist. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Ronin Man signing off. And I hope you guys have a good day.